Hello and welcome to Gone Phishing, a podcast from the North East Business Resilience Centre, aka the NEBRC. Focusing on all things cyber related, our aim is to help raise awareness and understanding among business audiences, supporting them to be better prepared and protected from the growing issue of cybercrime and fraud. I'm Rebecca Chapman of the NEBRC and a superintendent at South Yorkshire Police with nearly 30 years policing experience across uniform and CID. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to Simon Corbett, IT Services Director from Northumbria University. Hello Simon.
Hi Rebecca, thanks ever so much for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. Now, I met you first at the Innovation Festival this year, and obviously people know that Northumbria had been subject to an attack, so I was really keen to try and get you to come and talk to people about it. But first I'd like to talk a little bit about your role, about what you do at the university and how you got there. So what's your career been like and how did you end up there?
Yeah, so I didn't start life in higher education, actually. I started life in GPS, believe it or not. So I was a GPS expert and years ago had my own software company. We wrote software for mostly oil and gas industry, actually. So I was lucky enough to travel the world when I was doing that. And then I moved from doing a bit of GPS work into a company called Accenture. It was a management consulting company, and I did a lot of work then for the DWP. Got involved in things like pension credit and state pension, working with them, and then moved into the finance industry, and I did a lot of work with Northern Rock, and when they split the bank, if you remember that.
I do.
Yeah, and then moved into higher education after that. So it's been a bit of a journey to get to higher education, but I have enjoyed the last step to get there. Actually, it's a really nice place to work. So I'm the IT director now at Northumbria, which means I look after all the IT estate. That's all the desktops, all the laptops, all the infrastructure that links it all together. I also look after a team that helps academics with their teaching and learning. So they do a lot of training of technology and a lot of content development for their modules that they might be presenting to students. So they do that. And then I have another team that's quite unique for Northumbria called Norman, and they provide lots out-of-hours service. So at sort of 5 o'clock, the universities might flick their phone lines over to us and we'll answer the phones through the night, and then we turn them back in the morning. And I've got 49 universities that I'm doing that for at the moment through the night. So that's quite an interesting thing to do as well, alongside my day job.
Crikey, quite busy then.
Yeah, there's a bit going on.
Yeah. So cybersecurity obviously is a big subject for many people, including those of us that work in the sector. Can you talk us through in kind of simple terms the systems and processes and support teams that you have in place to help you ensure a cybersecure environment?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to have a cybersecurity team headed up by my head of cybersecurity, and their responsibility is to keep the university safe from a cyber matters. And so they operate a number of systems, and they kind of fall down two categories, I guess. One is on prevention, so we have a number of techniques to sort of prevent attacks, and then a number of techniques then to identify as well. So we do like a prevention and identification kind of in parallel and try and do both at the same time. A lot of it, I guess, comes back to least privilege, so only giving people access to what they need to do their job. And that's quite a hard mental barrier to get over, and I think especially so in a university, actually, where universities are traditionally quite open places where people have, access to anything, to do anything traditionally, and to try and strip that back to say, oh, actually, no, you only need admin access to do this particular role. It has been quite a challenge and quite a cultural shift for the university, but we kind of work as that as a guiding principle for where we are.
So obviously we're all aware that cyber criminals are becoming ever more sophisticated. Barely a day goes by before you see something in the latest newspaper about somebody who's been attacked. So like many businesses, and it's not unique, I understand the university was subject of an attack. Can you talk us through what happened as far as you can?
Yeah, of course. And I guess it's interesting. I started in September 2019, and 2020 was a bit of a horrendous year for me because obviously COVID started in March, so we had to move. We've got about 37,000 students and maybe 4,000 staff offline within about a week. And then if you remember, the A-level results came out and there was all that drama around the centre assessed grades. So we kind of did clearing, which is where we have the day where students ring up who haven't quite made the grades and they cannot get off places. So we had to do that twice. So that all happened in early August. And then in late August, over the bank holiday weekend, we were the victims of a really sophisticated cyber attack. So when people say things come in threes, they literally did for me in 2020. And it's interesting that the attack happened on a bank holiday weekend. People always say, don't they, that they're not stupid, are they? The people that attack you, they realise the weak points, and this group was a sophisticated group that attacked us, and obviously recognised that bank holiday weekend in August, everyone's going to be trying to look forward, aren't they, and have some time off, and so that's the date they chose. We're quite lucky, as I said before, that we run that Norman service through the night. So I had people working through the night on that night, and it was on the Thursday into Friday night that it happened, so just before the bank holiday. And at about 3 in the morning, they started to notice some systems going down. Now, things happen, don't they, in IT? So the alarm doesn't get raised immediately, and that's an interesting thing to think, And I think it was the CCTV that first got noticed, probably because Northumbria University is right in the centre of town in Newcastle, so we use the CCTV a lot, and we use it in conjunction with the police, actually, and share CCTV with the police because we're a city centre university. So it was quite a big deal, and the CCTV went down, and then someone noticed some other systems going down, and by 6 o'clock in the morning, everyone's starting to get a little bit worried, and more and more went down. And I guess as you play that through, by 4 o'clock, I guess, in the afternoon, this kind of speed that it happened, we had around about 1,000 Windows servers, and we've probably got 9,000 devices across our campus in the city of Newcastle. We've got another campus just outside of Newcastle called Coach Lane, and a further campus down in London, and we had about 9,000 devices on the network. Every single one of those devices had been impacted by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So 1,000 servers and about 9,000 devices connected to the network. And so I think, when I look back now, the speed of which it happened is quite frightening, and it's quite frightening when you first hear about what's happening, to actually think to yourself, well, what's the next step? You've got to make really quick decisions, because the decisions are so time impacting. The attackers were really clever, so we had obviously lots of devices turned off because we were in COVID. People weren't at the university at that time. They were turned off, and they were sending what's known as magic packets, so they'd wake the device up, boom, attack it. So it was very sophisticated. They were doing physical damage to some of the kit as well. So we had some physical disks, and a physical hard disk spins. But if you spin the disk really fast and really, really fast, it can damage it. So they were doing techniques like that as well. So it's not the impact across your institution is quite wide-reaching and quite scary. So if I played back what happened, when I got in and I was on holiday actually at the time, like all good things,
even worse.
Yeah. And I was up in Scotland with some friends and celebrating the birthday up there, and so I literally got in the car on the Friday and drove home, and my daughter always remembers that all I did was talk on the whole journey home, and when you get in, you realise the extent. I think I realised the extent of what had happened, and like I say, it's very difficult to make quick decisions because there's quite a lot of noise about what's happening. So you're hearing reports from different people, and the reports don't match, because some people are exaggerating, some people aren't telling you the full story. So actually in those first few hours, piecing together exactly what's happened was quite difficult. We made a decision very early on to turn everything off. So we basically went round to try and turn as much off as possible once we realised the extent of the attack. But sadly that wasn't quick enough for a lot of things, and by the time we turned stuff off, it was too late. It had gone impacted across the whole IT estate, and you kind of wake up the next day. Well, actually, you don't wake up because you don't go to bed actually across the course of the 24 hours. But you realise, you suddenly look out, and it is a bit looking like a complete destruction across your estate, and a bit scary at that time actually, to be honest. And at that stage, several things kicked in for us. So we got a company on board to help with the investigation. We got some lawyers on board as well to help with things. We also had law enforcement on board, and they came on board very quickly. And then the rest of the university governance came on board quite quickly. And suddenly, as the IT director, you're now dealing with all those different groups, and that was quite hard actually, because you have a techie level where you're trying to talk to your techie teams about really what's going on, a university governance level that consists of the board of directors, most of whom aren't technical in any sense, a legal team, and the constraints the legal team put around us, law enforcement, and so you're dropping up and down levels quite consistently. So that was an interesting angle to work through as well, and I think I initially found it very difficult about how to describe this to some people. So what I did actually is I came up with 3 questions. I looked at it through the lens of 3 questions, and when I was presenting things to the board, I came back with, we need to answer these 3 questions before we get out of this mess. And the 3 questions was, can we recover? Which has been a fundamental one. Can we recover from all of this? What data do they have? Because I was really concerned about what data they may have exfiltrated out of our estate. We obviously hold a lot of personal information from students, a lot of confidential information about students, as you can imagine, with such a large student population. And the third question, which was the one that really worried me, was, are they still there? And I'd heard these horror stories before, where people have rushed to recovery really, really quickly, and they were still there in the corner, and just as you think you've got your estate built back up again, you get hit by a second round of attacks. And I was so worried about that. I really worried about that third question about, are they still there? And it was literally like in the wardrobe cupboard, isn't it, when you're a kid, of thinking about someone in the corner and attacking you. I was really concerned about that. But those 3 questions kind of guided me then through the recovery, and they were things that people could get their head round, because they were things that actually mattered to everyone without getting too technical.
What would have been what could have been the impact upon the university? I know at one stage we've talked before, and it was fairly catastrophic, wasn't it, at one point?
Well, I guess, I'll be honest, actually, at one point I had a conversation with the Vice-Chancellor about, do we have a going concern? Because, if all of your data is gone and you can't answer that first question of can we recover, then, we were obviously doing lots of research at the university. We're doing all our teaching and learning, our students, all of their learning platforms. There's a lot, right? That's how you run your business, and that's how most businesses are run these days, isn't it? Then the core of their business lives in an IT world at some stage, and the intellectual property they own. So that really worried us. And then the other point, I guess, is that around the data. Of course, there are. If your data is released onto the dark web and available for people, then you could be in for fines from the Information Commission Office, couldn't you, the ICO? So, and rightly so, if you've not protected people's personal information correctly. So those were 2 big concerns, I guess, from the university at that stage.
So at what point did you think to yourself, actually, I think we can fix this?
Well, I guess we set off on a path pretty quickly, actually, and I'm lucky because I've got a really, really good team at Northumbria, and but we decided, in order to answer the question, are they still there, we would take things slowly in a really measured approach. And so we literally built a new network, brand new, not physical wires, but a new network, and we restored the first server into there, which is, for those IT people out there, is Active Directory. It's the thing that holds all your assets, all your people and all your machines. And we built a new one and obviously imported the old data into it, and then went server by server, and we rebuilt each server in turn. We managed to go back in time to a restore point that we were confident, but we checked each server in turn. We moved it into an area where it was safe, checked it thoroughly, watched it for 24 hours to make sure nothing was there, and when we were happy and comfortable the servers were clean, we moved them into the new network. And if you can imagine, we just went that one by one and rebuilt them all. We also ran what we called a laptop clinic at the time, so every single member of staff who'd had a laptop, we went round and got them to come into the university, and we re-imaged every single one of those. Every single device that was attached to the network, we re-imaged. And I think we were lucky, actually, in some respects, because of COVID, because people had been working remotely. Actually, they'd been used sort of cloud facilities, so they'd use things like OneDrive to have their files backed up in the cloud. I think if we hadn't had COVID, we'd had far more people who'd had their files only on their device on the university. And of course, when we went around and had to clean them all up and wipe them, they'd have lost those files, wouldn't they? So it'd have been quite catastrophic. So in some respects, COVID played a positive on us in that situation, actually.
And that's a bit of a lesson learned about backing up and use of the cloud. Yeah.
I mean, obviously some of the attackers these days are quite sophisticated and can get over into your cloud storage, so you have to be a little bit careful. But the same old rule of making sure you have things backed up really applies. And again, we managed to recover because our backups were good. I've heard some horror stories in the past now of backups being encrypted by attackers, backups not being able to, been damaged, and people not being able to recover from those. So having that truly immutable backup where you have a real guy, something in between where you put your backups is paramount, really, isn't it?
So in terms of how long did it take you to get back to, I won't say normal, because it's probably not even normal now, but how long did it take you to get back up and running again?
So I think we set ourselves 2 milestones, actually. The first milestone was we knew we had all the students coming back. So we knew that term was going to start on around about sort of mid to late September. So we thought, well, we've got to make sure that we have, a university that can teach its students. And universities basically run off sort of 3 pillars of technology. You have something around your teaching and learning software, something around your HR and finance, and then something around your student record system. And we concentrated on making sure those sort of 3 pillars were built quickly and managed to do that. So within about a month, we got those 3 systems up and running that allowed us to continue with our teaching. And then the other milestone we set ourselves then was to be done by Christmas. And we did, actually. We were broadly done by Christmas, which meant, the week before Christmas, we could say to everyone, swords down, pens down, don't think about this, go and have a Christmas break.
I mean, talking about breaks, if it took, you drove back from up north to come back to sort this out, and then it took, in essence, sort of 3 months to get back to somewhere where you were before. What kind of toll does that take on somebody who's an IT director?
So a personal toll for me was difficult. I mean, it's interesting. I think COVID played a part in this, because normally you'd have probably set an incident room up, wouldn't you, at the institution, and you'd have all been in that incident room, and everyone would have had to get to that incident room early in the morning and would have probably left it late at night. COVID helped in some respects, because we were all at home, so it meant that colleagues could take an hour out and see their wives and children, family and friends, and come back, and also were probably more amenable to working late into the evening because they were at home without thinking they'd have to get back from an office or somewhere. But nevertheless, it still was a considerable amount of hours. I mean, I personally worked, I think, 83 days on the bounce, and every day was a silly amount of hours. Oddly, for sitting in my office at home, where I just sat in the same seat for those days, I still lost 1.5 stone in weight, which is, and I'm not a big bloke, right? So it just the stress of having to manage it. But I think more was on my team, and I think it's interesting now when I look back that you rely on some key individuals. There's just a few that you rely on, and the temptation, of course, is when it happens at the start, is to say, right, we're all going to sort this, and you move the whole team to go and sort it. But of course, these incidents take a long time to recover from. So, after about week 1, when everyone's tired, you kind of need to look around and say, right, who's the next team coming in? Who's the subs coming off the bench now to give the first team a bit of a rest? And of course, if you've moved everyone initially to do it, then you have no one else. So thinking about how you balance that workload across the team was a struggle as well, to make sure that everyone got a suitable amount of rest. But you do rely on a few individuals, right?
Yeah, naturally. I suppose with a big organisation like that, you will have had a disaster recovery plan. Mm-hmm. Did it go according to plan, or were there things that you've now put in the plan that you've learned since?
I think we had a disaster recovery plan, and interestingly, I think it was about a year, maybe 2 years before that, we'd run an exercise of a cyber incident. But it's never the same when you do it as a paper desk exercise. It never drives that same emotion and the same fear and that you get for real. I think one of the big learnings I think that we didn't quite get right, but have probably done quite a lot of work on since, is the business continuity side. From the business side, so not necessarily an IT area, but from the areas of the business who definitely looked around and said, well, how are we going to run our business without IT? And that was a big challenge for a lot of people, because they suddenly realised how much they rely on IT. And I can remember having some conversations with people saying, I think we'll email around some Excel sheets. And they were like, that can't happen at the moment because we haven't got email and we haven't got Excel. So we're going to have to pause on that business continuity. And, you're almost going back to pen and paper for some things. So the business continuity side is interesting. And I think because we're a big, complex organisation, some of the areas of the business obviously had to wait longer for their systems to come up and running. And I was quite strict on the order of doing things. I mentioned earlier that we tried to get those 3 pillars of systems to get the business running. Actually, before that, we had a lot of health and safety stuff we needed to do. And if you think, big university, we had all the sort of CCTV that I've spoken about before, but all the fire alarms and building management systems. But if you imagine, we also do quite a lot of research. At the time, we were doing a lot of COVID research. So we have freezers, for example, around the place that need to be monitored because they're storing things. So the health and safety side actually took a bit of time to get going before you get to go with your business systems that run your business.
And luckily you were kind of outside of term time. So at least there weren't kind of thousands of students all milling around, all wanted meals and accommodation and all the rest of it. I suppose at least was there a bit of a saving grace that it happened then?
I think, when you look for silver linings, things could have been worse. I mean, I mentioned that 2020 was a bad year and we went through 2 rounds of clearing. Clearing is a big day for a university. We have, maybe 500 students join us on clearing day, maybe more some years. And you think if all your systems had been down for that, then it would have been a huge impact to the university. So we were fortunate in that sense, and fortunate, like you say, that the students weren't around at the time. So
I think the thing is, as well affecting the business, it also affects the people in the business, and it could have potentially affected the students. So, years of research could have been lost, people's careers.
Oh, I know. It's
gone. You think about the consequences of it. And for me, resilience is always about how you bounce back afterwards. So, are there things in place now that weren't in place then that would stop those things from happening if it were to happen again?
I think so. I think, as a university, people now understand the importance of cyber security, and, which is sad in a way, because I would never want anyone at the university to go through that. I mean, the staff and students, I felt so sorry for them that they couldn't do things. And like you say, people's lifetime work that may have been lost is a horrendous thought, right? So I did feel so sorry for them all. But we have now moved to a world where we consider cybersecurity. I think as an IT department, we certainly put it first and foremost in anything that we're doing. In some respects now, we think about working in a compromised environment, and that's a bit weird to get your head around, but certainly my head of cybersecurity now assumes that someone's there, and so he's working in a compromised environment and assumes that someone might be on the network, and what are the preventative controls you put around that, working on that assumption.
Yeah, so it's a complete change of mindset, really, isn't it? And I know a lot of people think that IT and cybersecurity are the same discipline, but they're not really, are they?
No, and we try and keep a bit of a division within the IT services department between the two, and certainly give our IT security teams a bit more of a governance role, so that they have got the remit to say, no, I don't think that's safe, or no, I think you need to do the following controls around this in order to make that safer for the university and make sure people's data is protected. So.
And obviously not giving away the crown jewels or anything about what you've changed exactly, because obviously that would lay you open to probably another attack. But are you now working slightly differently in terms of your team and maybe its resilience, and the way that obviously you didn't have a day off for ages and lost all the weight and everything? Are you working in a different way now that if you were to respond to another incident, it would be slightly different?
I think we've got extra controls that we've put in place to enable that. I still think, like most organisations, we're not a huge department in IT services, and I think some of those pinch points around resource would still exist today. So some things have changed, and I think we'd be better. I think some things would be difficult. But I think from a process point of view, we're far better, and we'd be far better prepared for it, and we'd know the steps that we needed to go through now that you only get having been through it for a first time.
And so if you were an educational institution and listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them?
It's interesting. I mean, I think my advice would be probably twofold. I think I would tell them to treat cybersecurity, seriously. It does need a little bit of investment to make sure you put the right tools in place. And I would also advise them to do what we've done, is make sure you've got preventative measures in place and detection measures in place, because the two really need to go hand in hand, and you can't just put the preventative measures up without any detection. I think that would be what I would advise them. And speak to people, I think might be another piece. I mean, I think I've obviously spoken to a few people since I'm doing this podcast with you today. And I think when you hear some stories, it helps, and it helps you to start thinking about what your organisation might look like and how you might cope as an organisation, because each organisation's unique, isn't it, and has their own challenges. And when you hear some of the stories, then you can at least start to think about what it might mean to me if it were to happen to me. So.
When you say that kind of resonates with me, because obviously we deal with small and medium enterprises, and you're obviously quite a large organisation and have a lot of resourcing and have had time to plan. Would you say that it's as important for a one-man band or small hairdressers to be equally prepared?
Absolutely, because that's your business, and it's probably even more personal to you because it might be the thing that you've spent years building up and that you're really proud of. And it doesn't take much. These guys are incredibly clever, and when I look back and I go through some of the investigation and understand how they did it, it's fascinating now, but they're very clever, and they can move around your organisation, and if they want to get through the door, they'll get through the door, right, if they're a big state-sponsored threat actor. So I think, if you've got your own business, I would treat it seriously, and there's some basic controls that you can put in place that will really help with little investment, actually, isn't there?
So obviously we work with small and medium enterprises in the northeast of England. How do you see our role in helping other educational institutions or small businesses? What do you think we can do?
Well, I think the communication side of things is something that you're really good at and excellent. And I think getting that message out to businesses that might not even be aware that there's an issue. And I think that's the hardest thing, isn't it? So if you're not aware there's an issue, you're not going to do anything about it. And so I think the communication side of things is something that you can really help with at the NEBRC. And I also think, some of the resource that you've got to go in and help organisations, it's a great facility and a great offering. And, if I was an SME, I would be taking you up on that to have some expertise come in and just show me what I needed to do to make sure I was secure.
Wonderful. It's been fantastic talking to you, and thank you for being so open and honest about your experiences of the attack. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Really appreciate it.